For almost 50 years, comic companies slept on this character. 85 years later, Todd woke him up. Here's a look at McFarlane Toys, DC Multiverse, the Gold Label Collection, Wesley, Dodds, the Sandman. Sporting his suit, hat, cape, and gas mask, he employed his detective skills, sleeping gas, and other gimmicks against a legion of crooks. Touched by the power of Morpheus, Lord of Dreams, World War veteran Wesley Dodds was plagued by nightmares of evil deeds. Eventually, he realized these were present visions, and used his vast fortune, scientific genius, and years of experience as a world traveler to create the Sandman, eerie mystery man stalking America's vilest human predators. He was a founder of the Justice Society of America, fighting uncanny menaces and battling the military might of Nazi Germany and Japan, but was always most comfortable hunting the darkest examples of human evil. No, you're not dreaming. Thanks to Todd and his team, we finally get ourselves the Wesley Dodds Sandman. A character that had been around. I mean, his first appearance was New York World's Fair Comics #1 from April 1939. The character, though, had gone pretty obscure from the 40s onward until eventually the character's name, at least, was picked up in the 1990s when writer Neil Gaiman decided to do his own standalone Sandman comic run, even though obviously it's not based on the Wesley Dodds design or character background at all. Again, while I made mention, though, of 85 years later, it has been like 85 when you trek back to 1940s to 2025 now. We're going to go ahead and take the tape measure. We're going to measure off to the top of Sandman's head. Then we'll bring in a couple of other figures. We'll also bring in some of the accessories that come included with the character, and we'll do a little bit of digesting and discussing. If that all sounds keen to you, hopefully you're going to be sticking around for this review. While I'm also as well measuring Wesley Dodds to the top of his head, I'd like to thank Popeye the Toyman. He was, in fact, where I actually bought this figure from. If you'd like to check out his Facebook selling group, I'll click the link down below. A lot of details all thrown out at the beginning of this video. One other detail, though, is that the figure is going to stand at 7 inches in height, or roughly about 18 centimeters tall. If the body of Sandman may look familiar to you, it's likely because you already have this figure in your collection. Yeah, lending over the legs, the vest, the shirt, the tie, and even the jacket would be the Dark Knight Trilogy Joker. The only tooling that I can see that they would have had to have done differently is that they would have needed to add the straps on the front of Sandman's vest. Outside of that, though, it looks like the identical figure. Even like the hands you can see are exactly the same. He's got the closed fist on one side, the gripping hand on the other. Hey, Joker has the same. Not as much, though, got lent over when it came to Alfred Pennyworth. The only thing that really could be said for him would have been his vest, the shirt, the tie, and of course his pants. Different arms, different hands. This figure was also part of the affiliate group of Justice Society of America. So, if, for example, you'd like to have him characters displayed like with the likes of Dr. Fate or even Deadman, spookier characters would be an ideal place to have the Sandman displayed on your shelf. Or rather, though, you may even choose to have him depicted around the time of Year 1 Batman. If that's the case, then you can bring in the Batman we've already had a look at, short arms and all, and also Lieutenant Jim Gordon. I was going to say Commissioner, but he was still a lieutenant at that time. Walking now through Wesley's accessories, and the accessory list is small. First, the figure does come include the display stand, the now used DC logo, which is present with all the marketing moving forward, guns, Filmverse, and pretty much anything that's DC now. I like the look of the logo. I still don't like how proximity-wise it's close to this peg. If only, though, they changed the logo this way. Just turn the steering wheel this way and still had the peg further up. I think what they have planned in mind, at least if you have the figure displayed, for example, Sandman's feet are going to be like essentially like this. So then you would be able to see the DC logo in between his legs. That's my only guess. But rather, though, I still feel like the peg should have been up more in the corner. Still, though, we get ourselves a stand. There's very few companies nowadays that are even including plastic like this. So we still have to commend Todd and his team for doing it. We also commend them as well for the fact that they also included source material for their trading cards. Wesley Dodds the Sandman, nicely printed down below here, one of the originals of superheroes. I love that they used this artwork and chose to have one that made use of his gas gun. You can see the way that the gas is wrapped all around his body. I like this. I like also that they've got the logo or the symbol, I say logo or symbol, the face of Wesley up the top corner. I'll tell you one thing, though, I still don't love. When you get a classic character like this, It makes no mention of the first appearance. Sure, it says his first name and his full name, but what it does leave off, unfortunately, though, is there's no made mention of New York World's Fair Comics #1 or the fact that the character first debuted in 1939. Something like that, I feel, could easily have been, if they just took this and shrunk the size of this, there would be enough space, at least under the character's name, you get to put his first appearance. Again, does anybody really care about that? Am I the only one that really cares about that? Okay, I might be the only one that cares. I'm going to move the card off to the side, though. One thing that was strange, though, about Wesley is that the figure already came out of his plastic prison with the gun in his hand. This, I'm sure, had more to do with the fact that they were already using what the Heath Ledger's hand, being, of course, again, like the figure is basically just using this body. This Joker hand was already designed this way. Well, somewhat similar. The finger, if you actually look at the two hands, it looks almost really like Wesley's fingers a little bit closer to the 3 that's below it. But you can see, though, that they're identical. So one thing I'm sure that they chose is that they opted to have the gun already in his hand. Unfortunately, though, I took the gun out of his hand at the beginning of this review because I didn't want to show you guys what the gun first looked like before we put it back into his hand. That may have been a mistake on my part. It's very difficult to put back into his hand, especially this little thin strip of plastic. The trigger that's supposed to be around this finger. I'm going to do my best to put it back into his hand. First things first, though, I did want to show you guys what the gun looks like. I guess we can kind of get away from the mandate that we can't use guns. This isn't so much more a gun as it is just a gas capsule that shoots off and emits what basically puts the criminals to sleep. It is really warped, though, getting it out of the tray. I might choose to maybe heat this up in hot water before I put it back in his hand. It definitely, though, is warped. Warping it may have to be one thing I'll have to do in order to get this back into his hand. Let's twist the handle in first. And it isn't really so much the handle that's the issue. The biggest issue really is the trigger. So again, we'll kind of just wedge this in between his hands. It's almost really like they needed to design a brand new hand specifically for holding the gun. Because again, like you have to kind of force that in first. Let's just show you guys what I'm doing here. And then carefully, because you don't want to break that plastic, fit that around his trigger. And then from there, you're going to have to kind of tuck this in between his fingers. There is really a reason why I'm sure they had the hand specifically already holding the gun getting out of the packaging. I'm going to have to fix that just a little bit, but you can see like he holds it okay. I would really just recommend altogether keeping the gun in his hand. Don't try to force it out. Don't do what I just did. Anyways, we'll keep the gun in his hand for right now. We'll get a closer look at the gas mask for Wesley. Sandman, what a cool character. I really like what they've done here for the character and the figure. The only one thing I really don't love is the excess amounts of wash that they've added to his arms and to the top of his hat. If you, though, look at the two figures, again, I'm going to bring back in Joker. Looks to be the exact same trench coat, same vest. And why I say it's the same vest, if you look at the placement of the wrinkles, they're in the exact same spots. The only thing, though, that they'd have to go back and retool, or repurpose, if you prefer, they'd have to add these straps on the front of his vest. I mean, Heath Ledger's Joker never had that. The legs are exactly the same. The arms are the same as well. And it's just to show you guys on the back, the jacket is the same too. And I'm an advocate when it really comes to reusing the molds. If you can repurpose a mold to give us a figure that came only really around in the 30s and the 40s, became really obscure until, again, like Neil Gaiman did use technically Sandman, but it was a completely different character. Wesley Dodds, I mean, the likelihood of ever us getting a Wesley Dodds, if, for example, it took really Heath Ledger to walk in order for Wesley to run. The head sculpt, again, it looks really good on the character. Now, you can't remove the mask at all. You can see, though, they've gone in there and sculpted the hair, so that's a nice touch. But the mask is non-removable. The nice attention to detail, though, is if you look at the goggles, they actually look like he's looking at flames. I love that. So it really kind of makes you wonder, what exactly is Wesley looking at right now to have this reflection across the front of his goggles? The hat, again, is not removable. You can't take that off or anything like that. Nice fedora, though, well sculpted. Again, nicely painted. The problem with it, though, is I just feel like there's so much unnecessary wash on his arms. They did this, I'm sure, just to give us this look of leather. The problem with it, though, there's not enough of it either on the... There's either like too less of it on the jacket, or there's too much of it on his arms. They need to sort of meet in the middle and have both of them exactly the same. Because to look at them, it really does look like the arms have too much paint, or the jacket just doesn't have enough of it. The jacket, though, is still attached to the vest, so that hasn't changed at all from the Heath Ledger days of Joker. Still has the shirt and the tie underneath, though, so again, like if you're looking at the two figures, exactly the same, at least in that department. Joker did have the chain, obviously. Wesley doesn't have that at all, and the exact same legs. I do actually like the coloring that they chose for the legs. They're not really quite green. They're kind of like a bluish, kind of teal-like green. It looks really quite well. And too, if you're looking at the feet, they're exactly the same as well. There's nothing that I can see, at least, that's different between the two figures. But it does mean, though, again, if we use this mold to get us a figure that looks like this, that's not a bad thing at all. Now, for Sandman's articulation, if you're familiar with Heath Ledger's Joker, then you'll pretty much know what you're going to be getting with this figure as well. It's going to be in a ball joint. Because the gas mask is the size that it is, it's not going to, first of all, hit anything around it. So it's very easy as well to rotate the head all the way around. You can also move the head up and down, and you can also rock it back and forth as well. Stop that. The arms do rotate, yeah, all the way around, no issues there. You can hinge those arms at a 90-degree angle bend, so you get yourself your capital T pose. The figure does also have a bicep swivel, double hinge on the elbow, and the hands rotate all the way around. The upper torso is going to be on a ball joint. You can easily move it up and down, move it back and forth, but while you're moving the vest, you're moving also the jacket. The jacket is a softer plastic. Legs manage to split out. They're on ratcheted joints. You can, of course, take the legs, move them forward, move them back. And there's a swivel there at the top of the thigh. The figure does also have a double hinge on the knee, nice and tight there. Despite really using these legs, I mean, these legs have been used for already Heath Ledger's Joker. He came first. Then we also got a couple of Jokers as well, I think, as well, use the same lower legs. And then Alfred Pennyworth also would have had the vest, also would have had the lower legs. I didn't mention, though, in the review of Alfred that also these arms and everything else were also used for the Heath Ledger Joker. The interrogation scene Joker would have also used these arms. But anyways, again, like the same lower legs are still here present for the Sandman. Because of that, you got the swivel there at the top of the thigh, double hinge on the knee. Yeah, again, ankle pivot up and down, ankle rocker. And Sandman does also manage to pull off toe articulation as well. When you are coming up with figures, obviously, if you can go back and look at the molds that we've already gotten before, I'm thinking like what Todd's doing when it comes to deciding what new characters they can come up with. I mean, obviously, you can look at a character like Joker right away and know that from the cost and the budget of tooling, the only thing that they would have had to have done different to tool would have had to have been the straps on the front of the vest. A brand new head sculpt, so that's factored into the budget. And of course, you'd had to come up with also the gas gun. With already the tool being invested into the presses, very little really, when you think about it, would have to have been invested into creating a brand new figure. That's why you can get more of the obscure characters from the 1930s like Sandman here, because again, from the standing of where they have to pay for the figure, right from the beginning of creation to the molding press, of course, of tooling the brand new molds, this part they already have to skip out because they already have really essentially the mold. It makes things for an obscure character a much easier thing to afford because they don't have to spend as much to create it. That being, though, in mind, with very little that they've spent to create the Sandman, things that I would have liked to have seen come include with the character, and I'm not just really talking about the display stand or the trading card for that matter, but I feel like they could have also added some gas effects, something that maybe could have attached onto the end of the gun so it could have just had like a spiraling smoke effect, being that very little, again, had to really go into creating the character from scratch. I think some of the budget could have also been dedicated to creating some smoke effects. Now, whether, again, you want to have this guy displayed as a Justice Society member, that's entirely up to you. Like, for example, you could bring him in Wildcat. Wildcat would be, again, a suitable candidate to be displayed along with Sandman. I would rather, though, maybe think a little further back from that and have the character maybe displayed with Year One Batman. I like the kind of idea that this guy would be roaming the streets of Gotham City. In my mind, at least, when it comes to displaying these figures, I think like Year One Batman, Lieutenant Jim Gordon would be ideal characters to be displayed with Sandman. Maybe some may not know that the background, the history of Wesley Dodds as Sandman. When you tend to think of the character's name, you tend to think of the stuff that we got from Neil Gaiman's run of the Sandman from the 90s. But there was a Sandman that predated that, one from the early 30s, the late 30s, the early 40s. Then from there, it basically just became obscure. The character just fell off the map until eventually we get a now new figure from Todd and his team. The end result, though, even though, again, I know a lot of the molds got used before, again, if you're familiar with the Joker, obviously you're going to be familiar then with Sandman. But it doesn't take necessarily anything away from Sandman. He still turned out to be a great looking figure. When I look at a figure like the Sandman, I'll tell you what I don't see right away is Heath Ledger's Joker. Yet, though, despite having a new head sculpt, a repurposed pair of straps on a vest that was already there, and a thrown-in gas gun, that's essentially really what we're getting. It's a rehash of the Dark Knight trilogy Joker. Now, you have to kind of look at this, too. A company like McFarlane Toys has to look at the investment, what they're going to be spending on the materials and tooling of a figure from scratch. You're not ever going to see a 1939 character like the Sandman ever see light of day if it wasn't already for the fact that we got the Nolan trilogy Joker. If it means, though, that as much had to be used again, bored over molding again, to get ourselves a Wesley Dodds, I'm okay with that. Now, I'm not going to let the company off the hook completely. With so much of the budget already being saved, because they didn't have to spend the initial cost of making a tool from scratch, you know that they already had a budget set aside. I would have liked if they could have used some of that money to invest in including some gas effects. Something that could have maybe even had like something you get attached onto the end of the gun, just a little spiraling bit of gas, just thrown in something. Because like collectors are going to look at this right away and think, well, you're reusing a Joker. Maybe could you then use some of the money to throw something else in there as well. Just though as a side note, as you saw in this review, the gas gun comes in his hand when you get him out of this plastic prison. It might be probably a good idea to keep it like that. The one thing you really have to worry about is not necessarily the handle, but the trigger. It's a very thin bit of plastic. And wrapping that around his finger, or even taking it off the first time, I was really worried I was going to break that trigger. Luckily, I didn't. Luckily, I didn't when I put it back into his hand. What do you guys, though, think of Wesley Dodds the Sandman? Are you glad that we are also getting this figure as well? And how do you really feel when it comes to using molds again? Do you kind of also think, well, you know, the positives are that we're getting obscure characters. If it means that we have to get the figure body again, you have to kind of look at the positives over the negatives. The positive, we're getting a really neat looking Sandman. The negatives are, yeah, it's using the body again. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. One thing that's really cool, though, is if you guys are also interested, get this one for yourself. I found this on the Facebook selling group from Popeye the Toy Man. As far as I know, he still has the figure as well as some other DC Multiverse figures, so if you would certainly like to check out his wares, you can click the link down below in the video description. If you guys did also enjoy this video, shameless plug, hit it certainly with a like. And if you guys want to stick around for more, so I hope so. This isn't, by the way, though, the end of the DC Multiverse. Oh, no. In fact, even though we've already had a look at 2 figures so far this week, there's another DC Multiverse coming your way through the pipeline. And making sure you guys are going to be coming back for that. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.